Good morning, friends. It was the Cannes Film Festival recently, unfortunately, and therefore that's meant that we've once again had to be subjected to a torrent of incredibly incorrect opinions by innumerable Hollywood actors, and I think the chief among them, for the most insufferable, has to be Pedro Pascal. Now, Pedro Pascal is quite a curious actor because actually, though I haven't seen it myself, I've only ever heard people say good things about shows such as Narcos, which he was originally in, and of course, he had a very iconic performance in Game of Thrones. However, eventually, there comes a point where an actor is almost seemingly everywhere all at once, and you can't escape them. And the more that they're shoved into your face, the less you like them. And it's not helped, as I say, by the fact that he seems to be just wrong about everything. And so recently at the Cannes Film Festival, Pedro Pascal said that I want people to be safe and protected. I want to live on the right side of history. I am an immigrant. My parents are refugees from Chile. We fled a dictatorship, and I was privileged enough to grow up in the United States after asylum in Denmark. I stand by those protections always. So the first thing, obviously, that has to be done here is to commend Denmark for their tremendous foresight in dropping him like a hot potato and allowing him to go over to America. But also, the more that we read into this particular statement, really what Pedro is saying here is that his overall loyalty is not to the United States, the country that took him in, gave him a career, and indeed a platform to go and continually spout this gibberish, but rather his allegiance is, in all times, in all places, to every single human being alive who is not currently in the United States. That his loyalty actually is to everyone who ever changed country, not ever those who are a settled people with a settled civilization who want to just go about the business of good governance and the safety of their own country. And obviously, Pedro being Chilean himself, it's not exactly like he comes from the most stable part of the world or a part of the world that is regarded as having strong foundation. South America is actually quite volatile and has been for a long time. So if we go to the next slide, you can see here as well that do you really feel that you should be taking moral authority from a man who needs to hold someone's hand on stage? It's just, I mean, I know this happened quite a year ago now, but it's just always stuck in my head. And so many people came out and applauded him for this, for showing this level of vulnerability. But when you think back to the iconic cool of Hollywood, would Clint Eastwood ever do this? Would Burt Reynolds ever have to hold someone's hand on stage? Would Harrison Ford have to do this? No, absolutely not. And actually, if one of those actors had have done that back then, that would have undoubtedly been seen as a bit of a stain on their character, that they felt the need to show that level of insecurity in public. By all means, whatever's going on privately, you know, those are your crosses to bear and that's your thing to overcome. But to do it in such a public way is it all adds to the infantilization of everything, that it's okay for a grown man of nearly 50 to have to hold someone's hand on stage. And this is, of course, to say nothing of the fact that his wardrobe seems to be just bewilderingly ridiculous. Like, when he came out recently at Star Wars Celebration in those boots and shorts, this was one of those rare times where I didn't see anyone defending this. No one whatsoever. It's such a ridiculous costume. But fundamentally, look, a man might wear bad clothes and a man might need to hold a woman's hand every now and then. These are not the great crimes in life. one of the great crimes, though, is just the fact that Pedro Pascal seems to be wrong about absolutely everything. And also, you know, if I just go to the next one as well, because don't forget that Pedro Pascal is a radical far leftist. And he put out that post that you can see there on the screen on his Instagram a few years back, where he said losers in 1865, losers in 1945, and losers in 2020. And so Pedro Pascal's gratitude is clearly never ending, and his way to show kindness and to reward the people of the United States for taking him in as a refugee is to basically equate their democratically elected president with the Austrian painter, and to seek the transitioning of basically all of their children. Which to me just feels like the height of ingratitude, really. But also there is something very much inorganic about the way that Pascal is pushed, right? His politics and the fact that you see him everywhere do, of course, go hand in hand. And he is enormously pushed by the industry because the industry wants you to like him. They want you to see him in Star Wars. They want you to see him in Marvel. They want you to see him in The Last of Us. They want you to see him basically everywhere. They want you to see him in Gladiator 2, right? And fundamentally, he is a very fine actor, absolutely fine, but there's nothing remarkable about him. And ultimately, all of this stuff is, well, if he doesn't if he will be one of the last people to realize that there's been a changing in the winds here. And yes, he will continue to have a long and prosperous career in Hollywood, but I just wanted to point him out, I wanted to single him out as just one of the worst examples of an immigrant who has come over to the United States and sought to uproot basically all that is good about it, all that made the United States worth going to in the first place. And fundamentally here, it's also just interesting to say that, you know, when he talks about the Confederacy in the Civil War, or, you know, the Axis forces in World War II, they're not his people. They're not his lineage. His ancestors were not involved in either of these disputes, unless, of course, Chile took a certain number of them in South America after World War II, as Argentina did, which I'm not entirely sure about, but wouldn't surprise me. But I suppose it's one of the great crimes of Hollywood, really, that people like Pedro Pascal are allowed to continually just carry on prattling about this nonsense with this career when general moral people, such as his Mandalorian co-star Gina Carano, were fired and basically went through a public humiliation for saying, hey, all persecution begins with othering, which is not a radical take at all. And so, yeah, I just think that Pedro Pascal is one of the most irritating people alive, and I just really wanted to rant about him.